Now, Singaporeans have been urged to stay united in a digital age in which fault lines and misunderstandings can be amplified. Senior Parliamentary Secretary for Home Affairs Sun Xueling said this at a leadership symposium here, adding that technology also brings opportunities.
Ms. Sun said digital platforms can be used to instantly spread fake news and can wreak havoc on society. And this is why it's important to have levers to prevent misinformation, like Singapore's new laws that tackle online falsehoods.
But she also pointed out how technology can help manage crisis. And she cited the example of the SG Secure mobile app, which allows government agencies to send out alerts to the public. However, Ms. Sun stressed that unity is vital.
So in our regular interactions, we need to strive to foster understanding between different communities and groups so that misinformation or divisive sentiments aimed at shaking up our racial and religious fault lines do not take root.
And joining us in studio is one of the speakers at the Genium Leadership Symposium, Dr. Majeed Khader, a chief psychologist of the Home Affairs Ministry, and he is here to share his insight on crisis leadership and its applications in areas like crisis negotiations and forensic psychology. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So tell us then the importance, why crisis leadership is so important in this digital age.
Well, you know, people are getting a lot of information through the social media and through digital platforms. And the younger generation, they're very comfortable with the social media and they're digital natives. So, yes, we want to make sure that we understand the way crises actually unfold. One of the things that we see now in this digital era is what experts are calling the online disinhibition effect. And people are getting bolder, and they're doing more daring things online. So we've got to get with it. We have to understand what's going on. And crises are beginning to take this kind of a more cyber dimension.
And what do you put that down to then? Is that because of the anonymity that being an online can bring?
You can hide behind.
That you can hide behind?
You're absolutely right. It's anonymity. You can hide behind it. You get more daring. You say more daring things. You do more daring things. So, and that worries us, especially in this world where there could be contamination. People could be easily influenced. And emotions can be easily fueled as well.
Right. Well, you also spoke today about how Asians and non-Asians tackle crisis. Can you, and it's actually quite different. Can you share with us some of your findings?
Sure. We've done quite a bit of studies in Singapore and also in this region. And we've looked at the Asian tsunami, we've looked at the Japanese incident, the earthquake. And we're beginning to realize that Asians actually might look at crises a little bit differently. So, for example, we believe that Asians accept things a lot more. People sometimes look at this and say, oh, maybe this is a passive way of coping. It might be dysfunctional. But that's not true. They have a very high degree of acceptance, and they move on from it. I mean, let me give you an example. With the Japanese, there's this concept called the gambare, which is this whole idea of we're going to try our best despite all the difficulties. The Philippines also have this idea called the bahala, which is the idea that, you know, we'll put trust in God. And Muslims have this concept called the tawakkul, which is this idea of leave it to God's plans. So it's a different way of coping with things. They accept things and they move on from there.
That is something we've seen we mentioned the Philippines. It just sort of reminded me of what happens whenever we hear Cyclone Haiyan and all the sort of natural disasters that inflict the Philippines. Just to move on, though, and delve a little bit on sort of more of your work, if we could. We understand you're a pioneer of forensic psychology in Singapore, and that you've also overseen the development of psychological services in areas like crime profiling, things like that, crisis negotiations for many, many years. How has the industry transformed?
Well, one of the big things we're seeing is this whole surge of cyber crimes and cybersecurity issues. I mean, you know, Singapore is a very, very safe place. It's one of the safest places that we can find. But and if you think in terms of our traditional crimes, they're extremely low. But if you think in terms of cyber crimes, we're seeing it surging quite a bit. So we see love scams, we see you know, impersonal scams, interpersonal scams. We see sex for credit scams. We see this whole range of scams. And so that's something that we're working really hard on. Our people are perhaps not so digitally mature. So there's this concept of making them more aware. So we're doing a lot in terms of training people, educating people, making them more aware. And one of the ways we do it is we talk to victims, and we ask and we try and find out psychologically what has happened. Why were they victims, and why is it some people are re-victimized? And then understanding that, we bring it back to crime prevention and work with the police to make things better.
And what would be an example of why someone is sort of, it's almost like once
more
bitten,
vulnerable.
yeah, more vulnerable, like a second time round? You would think that once you've been bitten once, you would be a bit more cautious or wary.
Or why are some people more vulnerable than others?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons is because they don't see the process of grooming that happens online. So, and it's subtle. When grooming happens online, the little things that make you feel good when somebody communicates with you, the little romantic sayings that people say to you make you feel good. And so people fall in love with this idea of a good man or a good woman. And that's something that connects with them. I mean, after all, who doesn't want to feel loved, right? Everybody does. So these kind of things work, and syndicates have been using this for quite some time now. And so we're educating victims to be more aware.
Has that changed how you are also working, you know, in terms of profiling these individuals? Is that changing how you approach certain situations as well?
Personally? Or just in general from a work perspective?
Both, I guess, personally. I mean, share with us personally.
I think from an individual perspective, you just become more aware, and you're concerned about family, friends, right? To make sure that they are aware of some of these threats out there. From a work perspective, you want to make sure that, you know, we send the messages out there, make people more aware that these things are on the rise. So there's a lot of education we're doing now to tell people about how these psychological mechanisms work.
All right, thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us, you know, all these, you know, the thoughts that you have and the dialogue that you had this afternoon as well. Thank you so much. We've been speaking there with Dr. Majeed Khader, Chief Psychologist of Home Affairs Ministry.